We're in Amud HaTfilah, Ois Samach Hey, and this is from the Ora Meir. שמעתי בשם הבעל שם טוב שאומר, אביירי גדולה ביד הציבור כשהשליח ציבור אינו מעריך בניגונים ולא אצל הסיים איזה איני מהתפילה, והם מעריכים בתפילוסם עם מעקפים על יודם מלהשפיע. And so he's talking about a situation where there's a chazan and there are people davening with him. And so he's saying there's a relationship there. It's not simply, oh, he's there and we're here. This is sharing our power. And so that the person that we're using as a representative can go to a place that's very authentic, that's very real. And so the people who are praying have to go according to the pace of the one who is leading, because he is in charge. And so there's a mashpia and a makabel in the situation, and this goes back to every time we're interacting. Whether we're interacting with a crowd or we're interacting with an individual, that there's an interaction that causes that one is giving and the other one is receiving. And we are usually more focused on knowing how to give. What am I giving? What am I saying? What am I adding? What am I trying to contribute? But we don't realize the art of receiving. We don't realize how much it's important for the one who is giving, in order to be able to give, that he has the proper reception to what he's giving. And so if the tzibur is going ahead or staying behind while the chazan wants to go according to his pace, then they're losing his authenticity. Now he's just going to say the words, but his heart is no longer involved, because his heart was going at a certain pace, and that wasn't being respected. So we lost his heart. We're now just going to have his voice. It's just going to be him saying, but he's not really going to be feeling. So it says, when if the chazan will wait according to how they're going, his perception is going to change, and then he won't be able anymore to access the place in order to be mashpia, what he had to be mashpia. So what's the problem? Okay, so he didn't. What do you mean, so he didn't? All of humanity lost. The world is less. And so the worship that we're doing, the service that we're doing, is not just to maintain our own equilibrium so that we don't run into trouble, but we are part of a whole system. We are part of a bigger unity that's affected by our condition. If we neglect our condition, it's not just, oh, so, okay, what did I do? I'm not doing so well. But you're not doing well? Everybody around you is not doing well. The whole world's not doing well. That's the nature of who we are. It's like Chazal teach us, we have to look at the world as if it's chetzi zakeh v'chetzi chayev. And you are the one right now with this action that you're doing are making the difference. Why? Because even if you're imagining that, you're still not getting close to the difference that you're making with every action that you're doing, with every thought that you're having. And so imagine the worst, and it's nothing. It's bigger than that. It's much more consequential, because what are we already imagining the world is? So we say, okay, the whole world's at stake. We don't understand what the world is. Every single human is more important than what we think the world is. Every moment in a human life is more important than everything we think the world is. We have a very small imagination. We have a very small picture of what's going on over here. And so we can't rely on our images that we are painting. That's for sure not the nature of what's really happening. And so when we want to give something to the collective, we make better. Whatever we make better, we're helping the collective. We're reducing the burden that the collective has of continuing life on this planet. And this planet is integral to the whole solar system, which is integral to whatever else, the whole zodiac. Everything is entangled. Everything has consequences that flow in either direction. And so, if the worship is not correct, the world suffers. If the worship is correct, everybody has more. This is the basis of the belief. This is the basis of the Torah. It says, if you're going to do it right, then it's going to work one way. And if not, you're going to lose sight of what's important, and then it's going to work another way. So it's actually saying what is. It's spelling it out, and it's saying that there's a form of worship that will make things right, and then if that worship is not done, things will not be right. We have to understand what worship means. To some people, worship is a word that they don't appreciate. And that's understandable based on what they've seen worship is and how worship was represented to them. But there's a real way of worship which works. And this is what worship really means. The thing that works, the thing that gets the creature and the creator back to be at peace with each other, to be in a loving relationship, to be compassionate with each other. And so when that's done in a group, the group has to be sensitive towards the feelings of each other in order for the worship to be effective. If the group doesn't respect each other's feelings, the worship will not be from the heart, therefore it's not worship. There's no point in pretending. Either there's the heart that's opening up towards reality, and therefore there's real worship, or there's no heart opening up, and then there's no worship. This is why Chazal say that tefillah is avodah shebelev. It's a work that's done with the heart. So if the heart didn't labor, the heart was not involved, there was no emotional shift, so then there was no prayer. There wasn't anything really happening. The mouth was just moving. The brain maybe was involved, but the heart that's actually the one that's doing this type of worship wasn't available. And therefore there was no worship. And when there's no worship, it means that the heart is going to close. When the heart is closed, then there's no blessing. Then things don't go the way that they should. Then parts of us start turning against us. And that's called the El Zar Shebegufa Shel Adam. It's like a foreign god. There's another force. It's working for something or someone else. It's not good for the one that's in there, and he knows it, and yet he's doing it. It's not reporting to him. It's reporting to a foreign entity. And so that El Zar gets formed only when the heart is closed. When the heart is open, he goes away, he runs away. And that's the ultimate sacrifice that we want to sacrifice towards the greater good, is that foreign entity that's bothering us from within. He doesn't belong. And in order for us to realize our real potential, he has to somehow be assimilated into the rest of the group. He has to learn how to work with the team, to work for the entity that's creating him, not against it. And so when we do worship, we help the heart open. And then if the heart opens, then we have access to the kingdom. Then we can be, which is the ultimate gift. To be in a body is the ultimate gift. We all were and we will be. But to be in a body means that we recognize something, that our heart has revealed to our brain something that only the heart knows. And it feels a certain way when the brain knows it also. And this has to do with the nature of what we are. It's at the core of why we are the way that we are. Something is driving us. Something wants to be inside of us. Something is always becoming. But what is it that's becoming? Only our heart knows. And when will it find peace? When it will recognize that vision that it hasn't even revealed to us. It knows what it's looking for because it will only find peace when it has it. But it hasn't told us because we're not ready. We don't understand to those things. They're too subtle for us to appreciate. There are things maybe that are related to decades of moving away and away from a target that now we can't even remember where we started. It cannot be described to us. It's only through experiences that we can slowly return. And so prayer allows us to process our experiences. It allows the heart to make peace with everything that happened, to interact with it, to recognize that this was the decree and that it has to make peace with it in order to move on, in order to live, in order to open. It has to accept reality as it is. As long as it's challenging reality, it cannot open. And so when we come to worship together, we have to become united, which means that we're tuned into each other, which means that we're not offending each other. If we're offending each other, then there's no longer any worship. There can be no service. There can be no heart. The heart hides. And so therefore, the Shlich Tzibur is the one that sets the pace of the davening in order to be mashpia to the Shechina. ואם כן, מה מאוד צריך הציבור לאזור ולשומע שלא יגמו ככה חס ושלום ויעבדו טוב והרבה. That the Shlich Tzibur has to give, his heart is open. We have to make sure it doesn't close, that he feels that he is in charge. וכיוון שכן ראה גם ראה אשר מלוכה גדולה ועבד כבד בין שניהם, you see this relationship between the giver and the receiver, how sensitive the relationship is, that there's something real that we're trying to create. There's a practical truth to how it works, and to what makes it work and to what makes it not work. That the one who is mashpia, he's even more in a place where his sensitivity, his knowing how to operate, will result in the proper prayer, in the proper form of worship. And so it could be that the people are ready to receive, but the one giving doesn't have what to give. He's not attached to reality in a way that he really understands where the heart is or how to open it. But to the extent that the one leading has an open heart, the way that the people follow will result in what they can receive from his open heart. אוי סמך ווב, יש פעם שאודם רצה לספר לבסלהבס ואיני יוכל שיבורף כבדם עליו. וישראל השם טוב זכרון לברכה אומר שדוד המלך על ראשו מספר לזה אל תשלחני להזיקנה שיבורף כבדם עליו כזוקן. Person can be young, healthy, everything is working properly, but the spirit is down. And when the spirit is down, the whole body feels like it's down because the spirit is alive in every body part, in every organ, in every limb. So when the general spirit is down, all the organs are less effective. Also, protections are less effective. And so then it's hard even to reach out. It's hard to pray. It's hard to open up. It's hard to worship. Because our nature is that when we're suffering, we turn away. We want to run away. We don't want to go towards the source. We want to run away from the source. And so when we feel heaviness, it's very hard to awaken the soul even to pray. There's like a certain numbness. There's a distance. And so Baal Shem Tov said, this is what David HaMelech meant when he said, Al tashlecheni la'ezikna. It didn't mean only when I get older. But any time when I feel old, any time when I feel heavy, don't let me go, work with me. The intelligence within should keep trying to revive the spirit until he can remind it something that makes it want to live again, that makes it want to change, the way that it's interacting with reality. Because a spirit that's down, the essence of a spirit that's down, is a conflict with reality, is that the spirit doesn't agree with something. And that disagreement results in the experience of separation, where the spirit is in one reality and it knows that reality is somewhere else, and it's not willing to move over to where reality is. It wants to stay in its own version. So that forms the conflict. And then there's a heaviness, there's a tiredness, there's a lack of motivation. That's the azikna. That's a time that can come at any age. That's azikna that can happen to anyone. And zikna itself is a result of many of these aziknas as they accumulate. This is really where we age, is in the difficult times when we're resisting reality. When we're flowing with reality, we age much slower. But when we're resisting reality, we age much faster. Because aging is an accumulation of every azikna, another azikna, and another azikna. And together the body is carrying all that heaviness, all that weight. It's the spirit that's instructing the body how to age. The spirit is aging. The spirit is getting more and more tired with all the trials and tribulations that it's been going through. And then when someone learns Torah, the Torah can renew him, Chadesh Yemeinu. Tischadesh kanesher niroichi, like you become young again. And that's when a person learns how to come in line with reality, to agree with it once and for all, to realize that it always wants to agree with it. There's going to be no argument that's going to convince it to argue with it ever again. There's going to be no event, no situation, no thought, no feeling, no experience, no pain that's going to allow it to argue with reality ever again. Then it can start renewing, then it can start to rest. Until then, it's never sure. That's the biggest fear. It's not really what will happen. What will happen? Okay, it happened. But then, if I will go into conflict with reality because of it, then we got a problem. Then I'm afraid of it. Then it can really hurt me. And so if I know that I'm never going to get into a conflict with reality, I'm not afraid of what will happen. What will happen will happen. I'll deal with it. If I'm on my side, I can handle it. If I turn against myself, I can't handle it. This is from the previous one was Or Torah, this is from the Or Meir again. Baal Shem Tov zalbir inyan al tashlechen le'ezikna kavona shal yashlich eis lidei zikna ki leform nefel savoy shel adam lidei zikna b'emtzom hemshech hazman. Okay, a different flavor. Don't throw me away to times that are old means don't let me repeat myself over and over again. Let me stay fresh. Because if I'm just doing because I did yesterday, because I did the day before, because I did the day before, and I don't remember exactly when I started, that's a bit old. That's not really giving it my best. And so a person's worship can become old. The way that he approaches his soul can become old. The way that he approaches the Creator can become old. He's been doing it over and over again. That's not it. There's no growth. There's no coming closer to the truth. So that's what he heard. Al tashlichenu le'ezikna. Don't throw me away by allowing me to waste my time. by copying myself, by copying my past. Oy samach ches. ספסי צדיקים. מרב אלוהי בעל שם טוב בפוסק אל תשכן לזקנה תימה וכי בבחריסה אין צורך סייע אסמה. Okay, so he starts with a question. אל תשכן לזקנה, don't throw me away in my old age. He says that now if he throws you away, you're okay with it, you can handle that one. If he throws you away when you're young. So why is he saying, don't throw me away then? Don't throw me away, period. אלא הכוונה דלפעמים יסלאי ואודם לאיזה עובדה, הן לתוירה, הן לתפילה. אבל אינו מסיישן אצל זה היסלאבס והחשק, רק תקף ומיד ייפל מהחשק, ודומה לו כאילו הסכן זה המצווה. הדרך שמה בפרויקט מישנה, לזה אומר, אל תשלחנה מהיסלאבס, ליוס בעיני כזקנה, כפרויקט מישנה, אלא שיהיה אצלי כפרויקט מחדושה. So this is similar to the previous one. But it's more on the specific action and on each action. That one was saying that when you keep doing the same thing, it becomes tired, it becomes old. Here he's saying, if you don't do something while it's hot, while you really want to do it, it becomes tired, it becomes old. When you feel the slahavas, when you feel the cheshek, that's when you do it. That's when the neshama is alive in it. Not when you feel the slav, feel the cheshek, oh, note to self, do that. Then 3 days later, it's like, half of him is doing it. Someone decided for me, I gotta do it, sorry. That's already not a proper doing. So the doing has to be with the life force alive. The intention has to be alive while you're doing it, so there's a good neshama in it. Then it's an effective doing. So it's similar in the Le'ezikna that he says, don't throw me away to times that make things old. But the difference is whether it's in the distance between when he has the idea until he does it, or in the doing the things over and over in the same way and copying himself. So he wants it to be fresh every time. It should be like a new deal, a new business that comes up that's fresh, that the person is excited to do it. The next one is from the Tzavah Sarivash, Samachtes Tzorach Odom Lilmed El Harglas Atzmoi, Sheyispalel Afil Azmiris Bekol Nomuch, Veyitzag Belachash. Veyomer Adover Bein Bizmiris Bein Belimed Bechol Koicho, Kedichsiv, Kol Atzmoi Seteman, Hashem Yicho Moicho. Vatzok, Kashetir Machmas Dveikes, Tir Belachash. He says, to express certain emotions, we have to learn how to scream in silence. Because there's the concept of a person committing all of his energy to making a statement. And this has to do with the natural language of the soul. The soul has a language and it abides by the language. If the soul wouldn't abide by its language, we wouldn't be able to exist. There would be absolute chaos. The soul abides by its language. The mind doesn't abide by its language. The mind is just constantly learning and changing its mind and updating and coming to conclusions, but it doesn't really know. And so, whenever we do an action, we're putting ourselves into the action, or even if it's speech, we're putting ourselves into the speech, like when we're davening. And according to how we say the words, that's how we're sending the message to the spiritual realms. And this goes all the way even to the physical. Meaning, if I'm bowing down and I'm saying words, it's different than if I'm standing up straight and I'm saying words. I'm saying two different things. Because spiritually, it's not just the words that I'm saying that are being given over. It's my entire state, it's my entire pose, it's my entire way of being that I'm sending into the spiritual. So there's no part of me that's not involved in my speech and with what I'm sending with that speech, and what that speech means to the spiritual realms. Everything that's happening in me is my speech, including what I'm saying, but not limited to what I'm saying. And so, when a person screams with all his might, when he's completely committed to the words that he's saying, he's committing in a way that his soul is now making a spiritual statement. It's engraving something into the consciousness, into the awareness of itself and of the greater soul that gives life to the self. And so, based on how we know how to verbalize according to what we're trying to ask for, accordingly, the results of our prayer, the results of our worship will be more effective. And so he says, we know the saying, so this means that when somebody says something with all his might, now this doesn't mean physical might, but it means full intention. It means full spiritual force. Not physical force, spiritual force. Full spiritual commitment. That's an engravement within the soul. That's an effective way of changing what's happening inside of us. If we change what's happening inside of us, we change our destiny. And so, over here, he says, when a person wants to say something and have an impact, he should try to say it b'chol koicha, with all his might. Now, while he's trying to say it with all his might spiritually, he might feel like he's screaming. Spiritually, he's screaming. But physically, he's belachash. He's withholding the physical sound within himself. He's having the spiritual effect without the physical scream. And so he's tzoig belachash. He says this is a tzok of dveikus. The real dveikus is happening in the olam hamachshava. The dveikus is not happening in the physical world. And so the dveikus that happens through a tzaka is a tzaka that happens internally. It's not an external tzaka. It's a tzaka that happens belachash. It means that his entire soul is invested in the words that he's saying. He really means it. He's completely present and aware of what he's saying and agrees with it with his whole heart. This ayin, again from the Tzura Servash, Pa'omim yesh lavid l'Hashem Yisbarach b'neshama levad. Sometimes we need to worship just neshama. Before he said, we're screaming inside, and outside we're talking quietly. Here, a deeper level, sometimes we worship just with the neshama. Dahaina b'machshava, in the world of thought. V'aguf ya'omed b'mkoimed, the body is just standing there, kedai shelo yechlek she'yishtamesh b'harbe. So he doesn't want to make the body tired with all the experiences that he's having spiritually, and so he's worshiping just with the soul, and the body is resting. Sometimes he can say the words, and he's feeling the emotions, he's feeling the love, he's seeing the awe. There's tremendous excitement, but there's no movement in the body. It seems to another person like he's simply saying the words. When a person is very close, it's very developed in him, then he could do it in silence without any movement. From the outside, you don't see that anything's happening, and inside there's this tremendous flame that's going up all the way to the heavens. There's an engine that's unstoppable hiding inside that man, and from the outside we just see a man. So when a person has a very deep dveikus, then he could worship just with the neshama, with a deep love, This is a better form of worship because it goes much quicker. It brings it much closer from the worship, the prayer, that you see the movement in the body parts. Because it's only worship in the soul, so the klippas, they can't have any pride, they can't have what to hold on to. There's nothing to measure that's going on over here. And so it keeps our enemies within quiet. They can't make anything out of it. They don't have any food in this type of worship. When there's a worship that has physical components, then the ego is also eating it. But when there's a worship that's just spiritual, it's just in the world of thought, then the ego doesn't have any food over there. There's nothing for him to grow from over there. There's nothing for him to hold on to. Sign Aleph. This is another one from the Tzavos Ribash, that sometimes, because he is davening with dveikis, with attachment to the spiritual, and he's losing touch with the physical, usually it would make him slow down. Usually we make him say the words slower because he's trying to keep up spiritually with the words that he's saying physically, and that takes time. But sometimes when he's very, very attached, it might result in him saying the words faster than he usually would. Because he's seeing, he's experiencing immediately, and he's hungry for words. He wants to go, he wants to see what comes next. He wants to experience them. And so he's going quickly, saying the words one after the other, because in his heart is burning a love, a desire for the source. And so it's like the words are just shooting out of his mouth. It's like it's happening on its own. He's just standing there and the words are running out of him. And so that's probably something good. If someone sees that happening to them, then you should encourage yourself to continue. Os ein Beis from the Siddur of Reb Shapse. לתאר המחשבה קיבלתי ממורי לכוון בשם kuzu. What is kuzu? Kuzu is one of the ways, one of the tmuras that we can switch up for the Shem Havaya. There are many different ways of changing letters, of creating different tzirufim in order to change from one mitzias to another mitzias, from one shefa that comes from the spiritual realms to another shefa. And all of them come back to the Shem Havaya. The Shem Havaya is the name that gives life to all. Kuzu is when you take the Shem Havaya and you take every letter that comes after the letter of the Shem Havaya. So for example, after the Yud comes a Kaf, after Hey comes a Vav, that's the Ku, that's the beginning of the name. And then after Vav comes a Zayin, and after Hey comes a Vav, that's Zu. Kuzu, that's the name. This is a name that gets written also on the back of the mezuzahs. It says, Kuzu b'michsis kuzu. Kuzu b'michsis kuzu is Hashem Elokeinu Hashem. With this method where you take every letter that comes after the letter from the name. And so he says, in order to cleanse the machshava, he got a sgula from the Baal Shem Tov, a kavona, that it should be mechaven the name Kuzu. Sheshem ze b'chochma, shesham ha'machshava. This name represents chochma where there is machshava, because I guess we would take the Shem Havaya for the keter, for the beginning of the koima, and then the chochma would be the letters after, so then it would be Kuzu. V'hi b'chinas din, it has already in it some form of gvuras, because it's not the Shem Havaya itself, it's something that comes from the Shem Havaya. Every time we're changing something, we're adding din, we're adding order that we have to somehow comply with. It's not already the original light that's unlimited. And so when we're going from the Shem Havaya to the Shem Kuzu, we're going in the direction of din. V'shem ze b'meliyah kazeh, kof vav zayin vav, he spells it out. The Kof has Kof Pei, the Vav has Vav Alevov, the Zayin has Zayin Yud Nun, and the Vav has Vav Alevov, is Begematria Taftefaya. Taftefaya is the name of the Malach that's involved in Machshava, Shema Machshava. Because the thoughts are coming from the ocean of intelligence. And the ocean of intelligence is dripping into our awareness thoughts, one drop after the other. So the thoughts are like drops that are coming. And that's the experience that we're having, each thought one drop at a time. And together we're having an experience. And so the name, when you spell it out in its full, each letter, how the letter is composed, then you get the gematria of Taftefaya, which is the name of Machshava, which represents Chachma. And by thinking this name, you're purifying your thoughts by remembering the Malach Taftefaya, how he is linked to Kuzu. And Kuzu is a variation of the Shem Havaya, so we're bringing it back to the source and we're recognizing which force, which koyach, which is the koyach of the unity, is hiding in here, is being dressed up over here, just like everywhere else. And the name Kuzu from Baal Shem Tov, I've seen that it could be, it's probably going to come up over here, but I'll just say it because we're on it, we're meeting this name now, so I'll say it now, is that Kuzu is representative of, first of all, Havaya Echad, because Kav Vav is the Shem Havaya, that's 26. Then there's Zayin Vav, which is 13, which is Gematria Echad. So Kuzu is Havaya Echad, so it's like Din because there's hiding over here. You have to already do some type of a formula in order to squeeze out the juice. But once you squeeze out the juice, you see that the Havaya Echad is number one. And also on a simpler level, Baal Shem Tov says, Chovav Zu, meaning whatever problem you're facing, whatever issue you're facing, whatever is going on in your life that seems to be hiding, something is in hiding over there, you can point to it and say, Kuzu. What's Kuzu? Chovav Zu. This is the Shem Havaya in hiding. So everything is the Shem Havaya in hiding. It can't be anybody else. There's nobody else that hides. There's nobody else that exists. And so that's the Kuzu. So on the thought, we say Kuzu to the thought, and that purifies our thoughts. We keep kuzuing it until it surrenders. The Es Ein Gimel from the Tolz Yankel. So this one, the Siddur Reb Shapse, we see he was a Mekubal. He's going with the Gematrias and the Tzirufim and the Shemus. This is that direction. Usually we're trying to talk over here to the logical mind, to the way that people are used to interpreting life. But that's not where the juice of life is really to be found. It's just that we have to go there because that's where the clients are. The customers only know that type of product. But the high-end products are where Reb Shapse was. Over there, it's already tzirufim and gematrios, and that's built into the way that reality is. It's not something that's negotiable. A gematria is not negotiable. It's something that has a specific structure. There are no opinions involved. It's not about the words that you're using this way or the other way. It's much closer to the structure of nature and the way that life really works. So now we're going to Tolz Yankov Yosef, Es Ein Gimel. Lulei de mistafine lahalas b'chsav. Okay, this is already a very good beginning for Dvar Torah. He says, if I wasn't afraid to write this down. So it could be interesting. Lulei de mistafine lahalas b'chsav ma sheshamati mimori dvorim neuroim be'inyan misuk dinin. So we could also assume that if he's saying this, he's probably not going to tell us what he wanted to write. He's saying it because he's only going to give us a little nibble, and then you should understand for yourself that I didn't want to tell you the rest. But let's see where we go with this. He heard some awesome things that relate b'inyan misuk dinin, that relate to sweetening the judgments. The judgments are what we're afraid of. If not for judgments, we would just go wherever we can go, and there would be no stopping us. The stopping is some form of judgment on some level that we're not qualified. And that level could even be physical if we're not qualified. If we try to run a marathon and our body's not ready for it, then there's going to be a judgment happening that says that, sorry, this has been a mission that was not going to be able to be very productive. And so always we have that. We're always on missions, and we don't know which missions are going to be productive. And spiritually, we're on a big mission, and we're very far from base. And so we want to know how to be mamtik dinim, because then it means that we can develop more of ourselves. We can be more of ourselves. We can be more present. We can remove the obstacles. So it says a way of being mamtik dinim is shach upar. These are two numbers, 320 and 280. והמתוקס ההרהורים על ידי שם שדה וחליפוי כהס. וגם שם הוויה בחילף ושם כוזו. So we're back to that. So this is what he didn't want to write. We're going to get it from many different sources. ורשמתי ראש הפרוקים בנהר בפני עצמי. So yeah, didn't give us much. But the kuzu we already saw, and Shada and Kahas goes to the Shemaim Beis. The Shemaim Beis is a name that has to do with the relationship between the two primary midas of creation. Our entire existence is a negotiation with these midas, with these attributes. The divine attributes are such that each one is running its own thing. It's not really correlating its behaviors with the other one, except if we know the name, if we know the relationship between these two attributes and how they're supposed to interact with each other. And so the Shemaim Beis has 72 names. 72 is Gematria Chesed. And it has 216 letters. And 216 is Gematria Gevura. And so it's a bridge between Chesed and Gevura. And in this name we take 3 psukim, Vayisa, Vayova, Vayet, and we combine them into one sequence of 3 letters, 3 letters, 3 letters each. And when we take the psukim, we take the first pasuk, Vayisa, we take it straight in its order. We take the second pasuk, Vayova, and we turn it backwards. The last letter of the pasuk first, the letter before, after, and like that. And the third pasuk is in its order. And then we have a name. It starts Vav, Hey, Vav, that's the first name. Yud, Lamed, Yud, that's the second name. Samach, Yud, Tes, that's the third name. Ayin, Lamed, Mem, that's the fourth name, and so on and so forth. One of the names is Kaf, Hey, Tov, Kahas. And Kahas has to do with how the Gevuras darken the light. As it goes through, as the Chesed goes through the lens of the Gevuras, it starts becoming darker and more thick and more, it starts getting a shine, it starts getting a color. And all this is a process that's happening for us internally. Also the names, also the spheres, also the malachim, these are all processes internally that are keeping us alive. We're receiving from all of these at all times, otherwise we can't be. And so through realizing the relationship that we have with this name, and the Shem Shada is the name that decides who gets to be here. And Shem Shada is at the very core of everything manifest in creation, everything that has a shape and a size, everything that has a time limit, or any form of limit, or any form of definition, is related to Shaddai. Life force, receiving life force is related to Shaddai. This is related to the Yesod. Shaddai represents the Yesod. And so, by recognizing how these forces create our experience, we lose the fear that we have from our own creations. And this is how we can be mamtik the din b'shosha, is to realize that we are the one creating what we are afraid of. We are the one thinking it. We are the one that is dressing up a part of our soul into something that that same soul is afraid of. Because there's no other way for the soul to be afraid. Anything could be happening outside of it. If the soul hasn't dressed up as it doesn't even know that it exists. So we have to first translate that thing into our own soul language before we can even manage to be afraid of it. And so when we realize the process of what creates and how it gets created, then we come back and we say, okay, if this makes me afraid, then now is not the time to think that way. Now I think something else. And this obviously requires a negotiation with the external world, because right now the world is not cooperating with internal work. There's too much going on outside that keeps us busy. And therefore, we have to find a way where we can really interact with our internal world and respect it the way that it deserves to be respected. To remember and to follow up and to be there for ourselves. And then the soul can learn to trust again. The soul could learn to create, to formulate itself, to formulate the thoughts that it creates and the emotions that it creates in a way that's really beneficial to itself and to our species and to all the worlds. It's all the same thing. What's good for us as an individual is good for us as a collective, is good for us as a universe and everything in it. It's good for us, period. Everything that's better is better for everyone. Everything that's worse is worse for everyone. It's the nature of how it is. And so here he's giving us a ticket out. If your thoughts are threatening you, if anything is threatening you for that matter, observe your thoughts. And they're your thoughts. They report to you. They're supposed to work for you. They're supposed to worship you. If they're not worshiping you, who are they working for? What are they worshiping? Where's that energy going to? What is it being wasted on if it's not working in order to help the one that's creating it? And so when the thoughts are helping the one that's creating them, then the human remembers to help the one that created it. Everything helps. Everything goes back to its source in order to become what it was meant to be. And then the unity can reveal itself. Then we can go beyond Kuzu. Then we can go to the Shem Havaya in itself. Ketzet Hashemesh B'Gvurosai, that we see for real what was meant to be experienced by us. We'll do another one. Litzor Chaim, Ein Dalet, Sod Shem Kahos, Shechalifa Shaddai, Ibezeh Hashem Horeg Moshe LeMitzri. So this is again these two. והלה ניצס אשר במקום תינוף לשאר שי. והשם הזה מסוג ומאוד לזה, כי ידיע ממנו לקרב בעל שם טוב, איך להלס עם זה השם לכל הניצוץ. It's to identify what's hiding inside in order to release them. And so within the Mitzri, when Moshe Rabbeinu identified the real spark that's giving life to the Mitzri, that spark itself was disgusted by what it was giving life to, and it ran away. Because the spark only gives life because it forgets. And that's why it can allow something that offends life to continue living. But when Moshe Rabbeinu connected that spark to its source, it remembered it couldn't stay in there for 1 second. It got released. And so he did it through this same name of identifying what's hiding inside everything, how everything is really the same thing, but dressed up as that thing. It says this name is something that can be used for this purpose. To return all the sparks. To return all the sparks means that every experience you're having is you. You've never experienced anything else or anyone else. And so if you want to return your sparks, it means that you're going to somehow learn how to make peace with every part of yourself. Because if there's anything in there you're not at peace with, then that's a part of your soul that you don't have access to. And it's yours. The soul cannot be complete without all its parts. The same goes for the bigger soul, for the collective soul. He's not going to lose his spark. If he loses his spark, he becomes less. Less soul. One aspect of the soul is not being manifested. It needs a vehicle that can have all the sparks. It's like if we're creating a glove, then it has to have room for every finger, otherwise it's not a glove. If we're creating a vessel for the divine, it has to have all the parts that the divine needs in order to reveal himself. So you can't have a soul missing. If a soul is missing, then the divine cannot fully be revealed. And so therefore every soul has to come at the end. Every soul is going to do their part. And so too, every part that's in the soul needs to be celebrated, needs to do their part. Needs to be revealed for what it is, as a spark of the whole, as a representative of everything. And therefore, part of the ownership, part of what's being worshipped, part of what the design of the entire universe was created for. Everything within the design was for this purpose, so that the human soul can reside within a body. And that means every individual soul, every spark of it represents that reality. For it, the world was created. It's not theoretical. It's if that soul will manage to manifest itself, then it will be justified. But it's that species, it's that purpose. That's exactly what it's for.